guys, Kelly here, and today I want to share with you my recent reads. Today I have 4 books to talk to you about. And the first one is one that I was really anticipating. It's a new release. It's Serious Moonlight by Jenn Bennett. I have loved the last 2 Jenn Bennett books that I read, so when I saw she had a new one, I put it on hold at the library, and as soon as they got a copy, I got it, and I was disappointed. It's kind of sad. Even if I wasn't comparing this to her other works, if this just we were talking about the story, I still would be disappointed. I ended up giving it 3 stars, which isn't a bad rating. It's not like I hated this book. I just didn't love it, and there were several reasons. First of all is plot-wise. So basically this is about this girl, Birdie, who has been homeschooled for the majority of her life by a very overprotective religious grandmother, so she really hasn't been exposed to much in the world. When her grandmother has recently died, she's looking for her first job because she's kind of graduated from high school and is like moving into figuring out what to do with her adult life now. And so she's interviewing for jobs, and during that she meets this guy Daniel at a diner. They end up having a one-night stand. She freaks out, like leaves him. That's why it's one-night stand. Like she ends up not talking to him again. But then a few weeks later, after she gets a job, she finds out that they are working together. So there's that awkwardness of realizing that they had sex but don't really know each other. So there's that aspect, and then they decide to become friends instead of like worrying about a relationship when they first meet, to kind of get past the awkwardness. And she is a really big fan of mysteries, like mystery novels, mystery shows, and all that stuff. And Daniel says that there's a mystery going on in the hotel they work at, that he thinks that this really famous author who does not do any interviews, that always goes by a pseudonym. And Daniel has seen this author talking to his agent while he was driving him in the hotel van. And so they are going about trying to discover the true identity of this famous author. So that's basically the plot. And see, the problem I have is that I don't really like when contemporary kind of like books that are mostly like a romance or coming of age involve a mystery. I just don't enjoy that because I am a mystery thriller reader, and when it's in like a contemporary kind of book, it's just not all that mysterious. And I understand that because that's not really like the main focus of the book, but since it's the main plot that's moving the story along, I just found it boring. I did not find it mysterious at all. I knew pretty quickly exactly who this author was and all that, and what the big mystery was, and I just didn't find that plot interesting at all. I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with it in general. It just is not something that appeals to me, so I just found this book much more boring than I expected because of that being a plot. But the story really isn't necessarily about the mystery. I mean, that is what the plot that moves it along, but really it's about Birdie and her kind of like becoming an adult and learning what that means, especially since she's kind of grown up really sheltered, kind of her first experiences, and how her and Daniel kind of navigate their relationship, their friendship after their first like awkward encounter. And I think the other reason I didn't love this was because since that is more of the focus is on Birdie and then her and Daniel's relationship, I just didn't really enjoy their relationship, which is sad. And once again, I don't think there's just anything wrong with it. It's just the way that their relationship developed. It had a lot of miscommunication, and part of that is probably because they're both very like they're the kind of people that put up walls very easily, and so it creates a lot of drama in a relationship and not talking about your feelings and stuff like that. And it just drove me nuts because it kept being like, just talk about it. And then they would talk about it, but then they would have another reason to clam up and be miscommunicating again. And it just bothered me. It's not like the kind of relationship I like reading about. So that's like 2 strikes against it, and it's the main 2 strikes. Don't like the mystery plot, and I didn't love their relationship. So, but like I said, it's not a bad book. Like I didn't like actively hate it. It just was not for me. So it was 3 stars. Next is a book I read as an ebook, so I don't have it physically, and that is Princess Academy: The Forgotten Sisters by Shannon and Hale. This is the 3rd and last book in the Princess Academy trilogy, and I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed this. I love the first book, Princess Academy. I did not like the second book. I thought it was just kind of an average read. And then this one went back up to being a 4-star. I liked it, but it wasn't quite as magical and lovely as the first book, but I do think it was a good conclusion to the series. I obviously don't want to talk specifics about the plot of this one, but it's about, the whole series about this girl named Mary who has always lived in this sheltered mountain village, and then the people of the main city say that the prince is going to marry one of the girls from her village, and so they create a Princess Academy, teach these kind of backcountry mountain girls to be princesses, and then he chooses one of them to marry. So we're following Mary, who's getting introduced to the outside world for the first time, who's coming of age and all that stuff. So it's a lot of about Mary and her development. And what I loved about this book was we got back to the Mary from the first book in the trilogy. I felt in the second book she really kind of like went away from the Mary I loved, who was this like brave girl that still has a lot of flaws and weaknesses, but that like is really all about sticking up for what she believes in and for her friends and her family. And we got that Mary back in this book. I really enjoyed the way she developed and thought it was a great conclusion to the series. So I can't say like I would fully recommend the whole series because I don't think the second book is worthwhile, and I do think you kind of could just skip it and just read the first and the last one. Or if you are somebody that likes a little more of the like showing more flaws in a character and political intrigue, maybe you would like the second book more. But for me, I like the first one and the last one, and if I ever read this, I probably would only read those two. Next is a book that I have been meaning to read for a long time now, and that is The Woman in the Water by Charles Finch. This is a prequel in a series of mystery books that I have read 7 of the books in the series. The series is called the Charles Lennox Mysteries, and like I said, I've read 7 of them, and I really have enjoyed every single one of them, and I just hadn't gone around to reading the prequel. So in the Lennox Mysteries, Charles Lennox is a well-off like man in the 1860s, so he's like part of the aristocracy, and at that time you don't really, if you are of this like class, you don't really have a job unless you want to join Parliament or something like that. But he really likes solving mysteries, so he becomes like a private detective, which is frowned upon in the people in his society, but he still does it. And so there is that kind of like him not going along with his peers and all that, but we still see a lot of that life of being the well-to-do British at that time. So I enjoy the mysteries a lot because they kind of remind me of Agatha Christie in the fact that there's a lot of the like kind of way you talk to people and interview suspects and things like that, but still like treat them with that like British respect of the time, but still trying to find out who committed the murder. And I just find it really interesting the way he approaches it. I like the people in his life. Like he is good friends with his butler, which is kind of also frowned upon at the time, but I love their relationship, and then just like the other people in his life. So I really love the mysteries. The prequel though, I shouldn't say I didn't like it because I gave it 4 stars. I did think that this was a really enjoyable mystery, but I just didn't love the characters as much because they're a lot younger. So in this book, Charles is 23, he's just out of like Oxford or whatever, and so he's just starting his like first case as a detective. And in the original like series, he's more in his like 30s and 40s, so he is much more established in his life and all that, and I just really like that part of his personality and the way it works with his mysteries, where in this one, you know, he's getting drunk and like making stupid decisions and stuff that like is understandable for a 23-year-old, but I just didn't find it as interesting because what I love about these books is more the characters combined with the mystery. And in this one, I really like the mystery, but just didn't really love the characters as much. So, I don't know. I also think that this is one, even though it's a prequel, some people, you know, if it's already established series, they are like, oh, I'll start with the prequel and then go into the series. I wouldn't suggest this with this book series. I say you should definitely start with A Beautiful Blue Death, which is the first book in the main series. And then after reading a few, try the prequel. Because the thing I did like about this is that in this book he is like meeting for the first time some of the characters that come up in the actual series, and it was fun like seeing him meet them for the first time, but I don't think that those encounters would have been as impactful if I didn't know what kind of like place they would take in his life later on. And I don't think it would have been as interesting, his interactions with people in this book, without that prior knowledge. So I would not suggest reading this one first. Start with, and plus Beautiful Blue Death is just an amazing book, so if you want to get hooked into the series, it's better to start there, because I just don't think this is as strong as of a book as the rest of the series. That's just my opinion. Other people might not agree, but I still think that the mystery was really well done in this, and I enjoyed seeing that unfold. And last, I have This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. And this is a little bit of a harder book to describe the setting. So we're in this world that is the United States, but some point after an event happens, and they're not separated into states anymore. They're in like these bigger clumps. And we're in this world where when people do violent acts, monsters are created from those acts. Like a monster comes into being as a result, and there's different kinds of monsters, and then like we are following two perspectives in this. We are following a girl who's kind of the daughter of the main guy who controls the monsters and keeps people safe, but he's kind of more like a mobster type of figure, and so she is the daughter of him, and then the other character is an actual monster. But he is a certain type of monster that has more like human qualities and thoughts and feelings, but still has these like monster abilities. So that's kind of like the synopsis I would give you. Kind of hard to explain. But I actually really love this book, and I'm sorry that I sound surprised, but Victoria Schwab is really hit or miss for me. I've only loved one of her other books, and that was Vicious, and then I've read, 3 others, and all of them were 3 stars and below, so I was shocked that I ended up, this was a 4.5-star book for me. I mean, it didn't quite reach 5-star status, because I don't think, like Vicious, it would be like one of my favorite books, but I thoroughly enjoyed this. I was supposed to be buddy reading this with a friend, and we were supposed to take 5 days to read it, and it took me 2, and it would have taken me 1, but I was trying at first to stay with the schedule, but this was such a compelling read that I could have easily just sat down and read this all in one sitting. And that's pretty much what I did. I started it on one day, read a few chapters, and then the next day I just sat down and read the whole rest of it, because I just couldn't put it down. And I wouldn't say that, like, a lot of people comment that the plot is not amazing, and I would have to agree that it's kind of more of a simplistic plot, but what I love about this, I think what Victoria Schwab is good at is morally gray characters, and that's why I love Vicious, because those are like villains that you're supposed to be rooting for. And in this one, with the whole monster aspect, none of the characters in this, like our 2 main characters, are not perfect. They're not like heroes. They really are gray characters, you know, because one is a monster who has kind of more of a conscience, but he still can do like bad things. And our other main character, Kate, she's human, but she still does really bad things. So like, yeah, neither of them are perfect heroes, and that's what I like about it. I like this whole gray in between. I also like this whole concept of monsters coming out of violent acts, because I think that creates this metaphor of, like, in real life, you know, when you make a choice and you do something, consequences happen in life, and sometimes those come back to bite you, and in this, literally, they could come back to bite you as monsters. And so I just really enjoyed that, like, view of what consequences can do in a world where monsters exist. So I enjoyed this thoroughly, found it a really compelling, fast read, and I'm looking forward to seeing since it's only a duology, I'm looking forward to see where the second book takes us. So those are the 4 books that I finished recently, and I really did enjoy some of them. I hate to make it sound like I didn't enjoy the Charles Lennox mystery. I have to say I did enjoy it. It's just compared to some of the ones in the main series, I didn't love the characters as much. Well, if you would like to talk about these books, go ahead and comment down below. Thanks, bye.